there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, I promised you I would be back, and I am back. This is one of a few more videos to come from using this embossing folder and stencil set here. Now, I have done the original video where I used it pretty much as intended and just the exact way that it kind of outlines on the box. You have the embossing folder, and then you have two stencils that layer on top of each other to create a really gorgeous embossed image. It's like a 3D embossing. And I will link that video down below. But of course, when we purchase products, we really want to get the most out of our investments when we choose to spend money on a product. And that means that we want to have lots of different ways to be able to use that product. So today I'm starting off with my next way that I'm going to use this embossing folder. And I'll also add that actually you can use any embossing folder this way. So a 3D one works really well, but just the normal embossing folders work brilliantly too. So I'm just taking 3 colors of ink here. I have picked raspberry up the top, spiced marmalade in the middle, and squeezed lemonade down the bottom. These ones happen to be distressed oxides, but you can indeed use any inks for these. It doesn't have to be an oxide, or it doesn't have to be a dye ink. And I am just blending these together using some of the domed blending tools. I find these the easiest, and I'm also doing this on some Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Again, if I'm going to be doing blending, I use the Tim Holtz watercolor paper because I definitely find that the easiest to get the smoothest blend on. I also find that going back and forward between the colors is how I get a really nice blend between the 3 colors. Then I'm going to pop this into my embossing folder. This is the roses one, obviously, that came with the set, but any embossing folder is going to work really fine. Now, I did just want to show you, obviously, you can kind of have your picture facing upwards and you kind of get a debossed look, or you can turn it the other way in the embossing folder and you get that embossed look. So you can choose here. This one you can kind of see that this one has the images kind of raised up, and this one here that I bring into the right, you can see that the images are debossed and they kind of sink down into the paper. So again, this works for both options, and I'm going to create both of these for you today just so that you can see, but honestly they both work out really well. I guess if I had a personal preference, I kind of prefer the one that pops up, but as I said, either, and if you accidentally do one or the other, all is not lost. Now here is the very, very simple technique. Take some Hero Arts Unicorn white pigment ink. So any white pigment ink would be really good, and I am just using a makeup sponge here because that is a nice flat spongy surface that I can pick up the ink with, and I'm just going to rub gently over the image, and you will see it start to appear more and more. And again, depending on how much of the white ink that you add on and how many layers you do, and it'll also depend on which inks that you use underneath, whether they kind of soak in or whether they sit on top. So you can kind of just go over as much as you want, and you can see the difference there, that it really brings out the image that you have embossed into your paper. Now, again, this is a really, really simple technique. There is nothing genius about this. There is nothing sort of mind-blowing, but it's one of those techniques that I often forget just how simple it is, yet how much it achieves in kind of bringing to life our piece of cardstock. So I really, really enjoy this. I must admit that the white ink pad, and again I use the Hero Arts Unicorn ink white pad, is a really good investment in your craft space. Now here is the final kind of look of the 2 pieces of cardstock, again the embossed and the debossed piece, and I am going to turn these into cards because it's all well and good just having them as little card fronts here and they look lovely, but sometimes it's the ideas about how to turn it into an actual card, which is the bit that I kind of get stuck on, or I get a bit of brain freeze. So here I'm going to carry on and turn these into cards. I have a circular die here. Now this is part of a die set. I will try and link it down below if it is still available. And I'm just going to cut this out of vellum. But if you have anything that has kind of got a decorative edge to it, or a decorative pattern, or you could use some foliage to pop out the sides, then I have used the Hero Arts Infinity die sets in the circles to cut a circle that was just ever so slightly big enough to go inside of that vellum decorative circle there. And then I am using this Lily Collection Sentiments This is a favourite of mine. It seems to just have the right kind of sentiments that I often need, and I have used this in so many videos, but it is a really good collection. It has a really wide range of sentiments, and I'm stamping down just for you, and I'm going to take it onto the left-hand side of my circle. Now, I'll show you why in just a minute, but I am going to glue this down onto my vellum. You could use double-sided tape, but I find that some liquid adhesive works just as well here. I'm putting on a really tiny amount so that it doesn't squish out the sides and I get it all sorts of everywhere. But this is the Reinker Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's what's inside my little glue bottle, and I have a video on YouTube. If you just type into YouTube how to fill a glue bottle, then mine will pop up first and show you how I fill those glue bottles without too much mess and stress. Then I'm going to cut down my panel. I often do this, and I just cut it down a little bit so that it is 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and that way it gives me a really nice little white border on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. Of course, that's completely optional, but I just really like that white border that goes around the outside. Then I'm adding some foam tape to the back. I'm going to pop this up, again, completely optional. You could leave this flat onto your card base because it already has lots of dimension because of the embossing folder, but I knew that this one I was going to make a handmade envelope. And again, I have a video on my channel about how I make all of my handmade envelopes, and so I wasn't worried about dimension for this one. So I'm going to use foam tape on this little sentiment as well, but I'm going to pop this up and I'm going to have it coming off the side just so that it doesn't take up too much of our gorgeous image there. I don't want to kind of put it right in the middle and cover up all 3 of those roses. I feel like I kind of sacrificed one of them, and then I will cut this off using some long bladed scissors. And honestly, sometimes simplicity is the best, mainly because I want my background to shine. Now, when I'm using foam tape and I want to be able to line things up, I often add some of the liquid glue on top of the foam tape, which I know seems counterintuitive, seeing as it already has adhesive there, but this way I am just giving it that wiggle room that I'm able to kind of wiggle things around. So I just give a really, really thin little layer of glue on top of the foam tape, and that way I can wiggle it around until it's exactly in the right place, and I know that I am not going to ruin my card by having it wonky. So I'm almost finished here, but I did think that the sentiment was just a touch too plain. It has some really nice dimension, and I love that white ink is kind of shimmering on top of that embossed background. I'm going to add just a couple of little gems here, and I think that this will finish it off nicely. I did get out some pink ones and some yellow ones, kind of orangey, and I thought that I would use both of them, but in the end I just ended up using the kind of really light pink ones, and I felt like that was enough. I didn't want to bring too much colour into the sentiment, so I changed them out. So this was a very, very simple video today, adding some white pigment ink on top of our embossed images that we've already coloured or already decorated, and it really brings them to life and just lets the embossing folder shine in the background. Very simple, but a really effective technique that shouldn't be forgotten. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you were inspired to kind of try this out in your crafting and card making. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!